All right, everyone, get ready for a deep dive. We're tackling the Indian market today. For U.S. brands looking to make it big there, it's a billion consumer market. Sounds like a dream, right? But,
Yeah.
well, we've got reports, expert insights, even a real-life story about a U.S. pest control company. They hit some unexpected snags along the way. But, hey, no spoilers just yet.
It's amazing how many U.S. brands kind of miss the mark. They underestimate the sheer variety in the Indian market. You can't treat it like one big thing. A product that's a hit in California might totally flop in Kerala. We're talking about a tapestry of cultures, languages, different economic realities.
So basically, you're saying that a one-size-fits-all approach is a recipe for disaster.
Exactly, and that's where our research comes in. It really emphasizes granular market research. It's not enough to just look at basic demographics. You have to truly understand regional preferences, buying habits, even the little things like brand loyalty. Say you've got a marketing campaign with big Bollywood stars, it might be a huge hit in Mumbai, but fall flat in rural Tamil Nadu because you've got a totally different culture down there, and they have their own film industry.
So I need to be like a cultural chameleon.
More like a cultural detective. You need to really dig deep, find those hyperlocal insights. And hey, speaking of navigating complex landscapes, let's not forget about the regulatory side of things. India's business regulations are famous for being intricate, especially when it comes to trade and taxation.
Okay, yeah. I'm already getting a headache thinking about all the paperwork.
Yeah.
Especially this GST thing. Goods and services tax. It sounds like a beast.
Yeah. It can be a bit daunting, I won't lie. But the good news is you don't have to memorize every single rule. Having the right legal experts on your side, it's like having a seasoned guide through that jungle. They help you make sense of the import-export rules, tax compliance, all those bureaucratic hurdles.
So I need a good Sherpa. More than being a legal eagle myself.
Exactly. Now, once you've got a handle on the rules of the game, the next big question is how do you actually enter the market? And the good news is there are a few different doors you can choose from. You can export your products, form joint ventures, franchising, licensing. You could even set up a wholly owned subsidiary. Each option has its own pros and cons, especially when you weigh control versus cost.
Entry strategies. Okay, this is interesting. Let's play choose your own venture here. What are the trade-offs for a U.S. company?
Well, imagine you're a clothing brand, for example. Exporting might be a low-cost way to test the waters, but you have less control over distribution and how your brand is presented. A joint venture with an established Indian retailer could give you local expertise and shared risk, but you might give up some decision-making power. And setting up your own subsidiary, well, that's maximum control, but it's also a big investment and a whole new level of regulatory complexity.
So it's like a sliding scale. More control usually means higher cost, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But no matter what path you choose, I'm guessing localization is still key, and I'm assuming that goes way beyond just translating your website.
Absolutely. Localization in India means adapting your entire approach. You want to resonate with the specific Indian market you're targeting. Remember those diverse cultural and linguistic landscapes? What's a hit in Mumbai might not work in Chennai. You've got to tailor your brand messaging, the imagery you use, even your entire digital strategy. You have to make it fit those specific audiences.
Sounds like a marketing puzzle with a billion pieces.
More like a kaleidoscope. It's constantly shifting, offering unique patterns depending on where you look. And a big part of that puzzle is digital. India has a huge online consumer base. But it's not just about Facebook and Google. Platforms like WhatsApp for Business are massive in India. It's a direct line to engage with customers, offer support, even drive sales.
Wow, WhatsApp for Business. I hadn't really thought about that before. So for our listeners who run e-commerce businesses in the U.S., what's the biggest takeaway here?
Think outside the box. Don't just stick to your usual playbook. Explore those India-specific platforms. Get creative. Test different approaches. Be ready to adapt on the fly.
Got it. Be nimble. Be creative. Embrace those digital nuances. But let's face it, we can't talk about cracking the Indian market without talking about Amazon. It's everywhere. Is it the ultimate shortcut for U.S. brands to reach those billion consumers?
It's definitely a powerhouse, no doubt about it. Amazon offers incredible advantages for U.S. brands, especially when it comes to reach, logistical support, even marketing tools to help you hit the ground running. It's almost like a mini business school built right into their platform.
So is it really that simple? You sign up with your products and boom, you're selling to 1 billion people in India.
Well, not quite.
Okay.
It's a powerful tool, yes, but not a magic bullet. There are complexities to consider, especially when it comes to GST compliance. You'll likely need a representative in India to handle that. And then there's the whole world of localized payment solutions, which can be tricky.
So it's like you're on a high-speed train,
Right.
but you still need to know the route and the signals right.
That's a great analogy. You still need to do your homework. Understand the nuances of the Indian consumer and tailor your approach. And speaking of tailoring approaches, that's a good segue to our case study. Remember that U.S. pest control company I mentioned, Flytrap.in? They learned some hard lessons about adapting to the Indian market.
Flytrap.in, the brand that faced some serious challenges but ultimately thrived.
Yeah.
I'm eager to hear more.
So Flytrap.in is manufactured by a U.S. company called Enterprise of CC. They have a great global reputation. They were already making products for big brands like Black Flag and Victor when they decided to enter India. Their initial strategy was to partner with some of the biggest Indian brands in pest control.
Seems like a solid plan at first glance. Team up with the big players, leverage their networks. What could go wrong?
On paper, it looked like a surefire win, but reality was a different story. Despite positive feedback, even product testing, those partnerships just fizzled out. They couldn't get those big brands to fully commit.
They hit a wall then. What?
They decided to pivot. Flytrap.in decided to go solo. Enter the market as an independent brand. They set up their own e-commerce platform, registered on Amazon India, and started focusing on direct-to-consumer online sales.
Cut out the middleman, went straight to the source. Did that actually work?
It was a risky move, but it paid off. They really focused on online promotion, using targeted digital campaigns and emphasizing customer engagement. And here's an interesting twist. They even started manufacturing some of their products locally in India.
Local manufacturing. Why was that such a game changer?
It was a smart move for several reasons. Manufacturing in India meant lower production costs. They could offer more competitive pricing. And there's also that appeal of made in India. It resonated with consumers.
So they adapted not just their marketing, but their entire business model.
Exactly. And the results speak for themselves. Flytrap. Flytrap started seeing significant growth-building brand recognition in India, proving that a U.S. brand could succeed even without those big-name partnerships.
It's an inspiring story. It shows that with the right strategy, even seemingly impossible challenges can be overcome. But let's go back to Amazon for a moment. You mentioned GST compliance. What exactly is GST, and why is it such a big deal for U.S. brands selling in India?
GST stands for Goods and Services Tax. It's basically India's version of a value-added tax. Before GST was implemented in 2017, India had a really complicated tax system with multiple taxes levied at different stages of production and distribution. It was a bureaucratic nightmare.
So GST was supposed to simplify things.
That was the goal, to streamline the system, create a single unified tax across the country, and to a large extent it has simplified things. But there are still complexities, especially for businesses that are new to the Indian market.
Okay, but why is this single tax still so complicated for U.S. companies?
The key thing to understand is that GST is a destination-based tax, meaning it's levied where the goods or services are consumed, not where they're produced. So if a U.S. company is selling products to customers in India, they need to be GST compliant, even if they're operating from the U.S.
So even if I'm shipping from my warehouse in Chicago, I still need to worry about Indian taxes. That seems tricky.
It can be. To be GST compliant, you need to register for GST in India, even if you don't have a physical presence there. You need a GST identification number, file regular GST returns, and of course comply with all the regulations.
Wow, a mountain of paperwork. Is it even realistic for a small U.S.-based business to handle all of that?
It can be a challenge, but it's definitely doable. And there are resources available to help you navigate the process. Many U.S. companies partner with local tax consultants or GST representatives in India who can handle the registration, filing, and compliance aspects.
So it's like having a local guide who speaks the language of Indian taxes. Makes sense. But why should U.S. businesses go through all this trouble? What are the benefits of being GST compliant?
Well, first and foremost, it's about legality. You can't legally sell in India without being GST compliant. But beyond that, there are several advantages. For example, being GST registered allows you to claim input tax credit. This means you can offset the GST you paid on your inputs, things like raw materials or services, against the GST you collect on your sales.
So it's not just about avoiding penalties, it's also a way to save money.
Yeah, exactly. And there's more. Being GST compliant also boosts your credibility and trustworthiness in the eyes of Indian consumers. It shows you're serious about doing business in India, following the rules, which can be a big advantage in a market where trust is so important.
Like a badge of honor proving you're a legitimate and reliable business.
Exactly. So while GST can seem daunting at first, it's an essential part of doing business in India. And with the right guidance and support, it's a hurdle that U.S. companies can definitely overcome.
This is all incredibly insightful. We've covered marketing strategies, GST compliance, even heard that inspiring story about Flytrap.in. But what about U.S. brands that are looking beyond e-commerce? What if they want to actually set up shop in India, build a factory, or open an office? That's a whole other level of complexity, right?
It definitely is. Taking that leap, setting up a physical presence in India, it could be a branch office, a factory, or even a full-fledged subsidiary. It's a whole different ballgame. We're talking about foreign direct investment, FDI. It sounds big, complicated. Is it really a viable option for U.S. companies, especially smaller ones?
It does sound intimidating. Where do you even start? Is India even open to foreign businesses setting up shop there?
That's a common concern, but you might be surprised India actually has a pretty welcoming FDI policy, especially compared to some other emerging markets. In many sectors, foreign companies are allowed to own up to 100% of their Indian subsidiaries.
100% ownership. That's amazing. But there must be some catches, right?
Of course, there are always details. Some sectors have specific regulations and restrictions on foreign ownership. Things like defense, media, retail. It's crucial to do your research and understand the specific rules for your industry.
So it's not a free-for-all.
Not at all. Having experienced legal and financial advisors on your team is super important. They can help you navigate all those regulations, ensure compliance, and make the whole process a lot smoother.
Sounds like assembling the right team is step one. But besides the legal side of things, what strategic factors should U.S. companies consider before jumping into FDI in India?
Clarity about your goals is essential. What are you hoping to achieve by establishing a physical presence in India? Are you trying to tap into that massive domestic market, maybe create a manufacturing hub for exports, or perhaps attract some of that top talent from India's skilled workforce?
So your FDI strategy needs to align with your overall business goals. Makes sense. But let's be honest, India has a reputation for bureaucracy. Has that changed at all? Is it still a headache for foreign businesses?
India has definitely had its share of red tape in the past, but things have been improving. The government is making a real effort to streamline processes, reduce those bureaucratic hurdles, and create a more investor-friendly environment.
So they're trying to shed that old image and roll out the welcome mat.
Exactly. They've implemented some pretty significant reforms, things like online portals for company registration, simplified tax procedures, even dedicated investment facilitation desks to help foreign investors. These efforts are definitely paying off. India's ranking in the world. Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index has been climbing steadily.
Okay, so it's getting easier to do business in India. That's encouraging. But what about the risks? What should U.S. companies be wary of when considering FDI in India?
Regulatory uncertainty is always a concern. While India's FDI policies is generally open, there can be sudden changes or different interpretations of regulations. You have to stay informed, work with those seasoned advisors, and be flexible with your plans.
So being adaptable is crucial, just like we talked about with digital marketing. What else should U.S. companies be mindful of?
Infrastructure bottlenecks are another potential challenge. While India has made progress in improving its infrastructure, there can still be issues with transportation, logistics, and power supply. These things can definitely affect your operations and your bottom line.
So factor those potential costs and delays into your planning. Anything else?
And then there's the risk of corruption. While India is taking steps to address it, corruption can still be a reality in some parts of the country. U.S. companies need to be careful, implement strong ethical guidelines, and make sure there's transparency in all their dealings.
Sounds like a mix of cautious optimism is the best approach. Lots of potential rewards, but also some real risks to keep in mind.
That's it. Entering the Indian market, whether through e-commerce or FDI, takes careful planning, strategic thinking, and a good dose of adaptability.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've explored the complexities of the Indian market, navigated the regulatory landscape, unpacked different entry strategies, and even touched on the world of FDI. We've learned that cracking the code of the Indian market isn't a walk in the park. But for those who are willing to embrace the challenges and the opportunities, the rewards can be huge. As we wrap up, I'd like to leave you with a thought. If you were to take your brand to India, what unique aspect would you highlight to resonate with Indian consumers? What would be your secret sauce? This deep dive is just the beginning. The Indian market is a vast and dynamic landscape waiting to be explored. So go out there, be bold, be adaptable, and who knows, maybe your brand will be the next success story we feature right here on the Deep Dive.